In this short video, I'm going to show you how you can get the most out of the ChatterBox text-to-speech AI tool. So the key to this, if you look at this IP address, you can see that I'm running this 100% local. So it's running on my local machine. There's nothing going out into the cloud, no internet services. So anything I type in here, I've got perfect privacy. It's all in my machine. So if we go down what happens when it's actually installed, it's all running in a web browser. Now the first option here is to download extra models. Now if you're using English, you don't need to bother with this, but you can see it supports 23 different languages, and you can now download the multi-language support if you want to be able to generate languages. Now the next box is you type what you want it to say, and it's put some dummy text in here, and I'll just leave that now so we can actually show you a test. The key about this, with ChatterBox, there is a limit with ChatterBox of how much text it can decode at once. But the nice thing about this front end is that we'll take your text and it will break it down into chunks and actually convert those to speech separately, then chunk them together at the end. Now this can cause a few issues, and I'll explain how to avoid those a little bit later. But let's go down the rest of the interface. So the next here, we've got the language selection, and obviously you've got all of these different languages. Then we've got the reference audio. This is the audio that will be used to clone the AI. So if I put my voice in here, it will create an AI voice, not exactly like mine, but similar to mine. And depending on the seed that is used, it will be slightly random. So, my voice will be slightly different. But if we look here, there's one built in. So if I just click play.
This is an example voice for ChatterBox.
So if you remember that voice, it was a lady's voice, because now anything that we generate will have a similar style to that voice. Now all you need to clone is 10 to 15 seconds of audio. I'll do a generate now before I go into the rest so you can see how it works. So if we go to the bottom of the page, we click generate speech. And you see now it's ticking away and it's going to be doing the generation. And I've said before, it's going to base the generation on this particular voice. And it's going to use all of the parameters here, which I'm going to explain in detail in a moment. So you can see it took about 30 seconds to actually generate this speech. So it's, fairly quick. And I'll show you the reference audio again. Play the reference audio so you can hear the original voice.
This is an example voice for ChatterBox.
And now the AI equivalent.
Attention, humans of Earth. This is your refrigerator speaking. I'm tired of being opened every 3 minutes just so you can stare at me like I'm hiding life secrets.
So you can see it's pretty amazing. It's pretty good quality. But next thing we need to know, it's all very well having this voice, but you may want to clone your own voice or a voice off the internet. If you want it to talk a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, you can do that. So you've got two options at the bottom of here. We can click this, and now we need to just drag and drop an audio file of who we want to actually clone. And we drop that here, and then we can actually generate a voice. Or we can click here, and it will now give the ability to record your voice directly. So by clicking here, you can see now it brings up the ability to record. So I'm just going to record. Hello, my name is Phil. I went to the shops today and bought some ingredients for pizza. And now you can see I've got that audio. Hello, my name is Phil. I went to the shops today and bought. So there you go. What I'm going to do now is change this text. So I can go, welcome to the new channel that I have created. Okay. And now I just click generate. And as simple as that, just a few seconds. Welcome to the new channel that I have created. So you can see it sounds pretty like me, but that's not the way you would stop. I would not recommend just recording your voice in here. Why? Because when you're recording your voice, there's going to be background noise and things like that. So what I suggest you do is actually use a tool like Audacity or Audition, record your voice in there and silence any areas so you get rid of all background noise and make sure your voice is really clear. So once you've got a nice clear bit of audio, what you also want to do as well, and you can do that within the tool here, you can see there's the ability to be able to trim the audio because we've got these big spaces of audio here that are not actually doing anything. So if I click the trim, I can actually trim this right back. Trim. And now the AI engine is only going to be scanning this amount. So it's going to be a much better result, hopefully. Next move, we've got voice conversation mode. So what this enables you to do, it enables you to create like an interview scenario where you can actually have multiple speakers. So you would have two different reference audios, and you could have the two speakers talking to each other. And it gives you an explanation here of how you can actually write the text. So you can see you use a speaker name and then you put the text in. And there's an example of how you would write it. So here, Alice, hello, Bob, Bob. So you can actually create a form of podcast, that type of thing. And then we've got a few settings here that just really set up the pauses between, when the two speakers are talking. If you want it a more fast pace, you can actually reduce these numbers. If you want it a more steady pace, you can increase them. So that's that one. Then we come down and we've got here, this is an ability to save any presets that you've done. So imagine you've created a speaker and you like that particular speaker, you've done all your settings. You can actually then save that as a preset. So you don't have to go through all of the trouble of loading the reference audio, trimming it, etc. You can actually just select the preset in this drop-down box. I've not created any presets yet, but it's a simple case of just, create a preset, and then you can actually, save that voice as a preset. And you can see now I can select that voice as a preset. Next is just the file locations. So this, you don't really need to touch this, but it just tells you where the voice files are saved, etc. So if you're running low on space on your primary drive and, you want to move these to another location, you can do that. Now, the next things is these two important things is exaggeration. So you can see what it's saying is here, higher values, more dramatic speech. So if you're doing something like a podcast or a tutorial, you want something fairly neutral, around 0.5. But if you say telling a story or something where you want a bit of excitement, you can actually increase this number and it will put some excitement in the voice. The next one is the pace. So if you find that it's too quick, so imagine you're doing a tutorial, you may want it to be delivered slightly slower so people can actually digest the information. You can actually reduce this number and it will speak slower or quicker if you increase it. The next one now is the advanced settings. You don't need to touch these a lot, but it is important. At the beginning of the tutorial, I said about it actually can only convert so much text at once. So if we put a lot of text in here, it's going to break it into chunks. And here you can see the chunk size. So you can see here, we've got 300 characters. So it's going to look at 300 characters. So if you've got 600 characters, it's going to break it into 2 chunks. But you can actually increase that or decrease. And you can see here, small and more consistent, larger, fewer seams. So what that means is if you have a really big amount of text, a really large chunk, the AI can, go off the rails a little bit. I've found it works fairly well, to be honest, even at the high number, but it can go off the rails a bit. So you can reduce the chunk, but you've got to remember, probably take a little bit longer because it's going to be feeding more chunks into the AI one after another and then stitching those together at the end. Next thing is the temperature. So this is, when we get our reference audio, is how close do we want the AI to match that reference audio? Do we want it to clone it really close so it sounds very much like the original speaker? Or do we want to give it some flexibility to be more creative? And this could be nice, is you may want to create a speaker that, you want to use your voice, but you don't really want it to sound like you. So you can allow it to be more creative, and then you can actually generate a speech that sounds a little bit close to you, but not exactly like you. Now, the next one is really important, this random seed. Every time I click this generate speech, it's going to send a random number to the AI engine. And based on that random number, that can affect how the AI generates the speech. So if I was to generate this text over and over again, they would have slight differences in the way they sounded. The accent might be slightly different, etc. Now that's not really good if you want consistency. So what you should do is actually set a definite seed. So what you do, you just type a seed in, do a test, make sure you're happy with the accent and things like that. And if you are, you can actually, note that seed down. And if you use that seed again in the future, it will give you reproducible results. So if I, put a seed in there and click generate 10 times, it should be almost the same every time. And then finally, we've got some post-processing. So we can do things like enable reverb if we want to make it sound like you're in a particular room, or if you want to, put some dampening on the reverb or extra reverb. We want to enable an echo. So just as an example, I'll do that. So I'll put enable echo, and then I will do a generate audio again. Now, I tend not to like this post-production. I prefer to do it afterwards myself. But you can see, here we go. Welcome to the new channel that I have created. So you can see the echo works quite well. I can't see the use for that unless you're doing some special effect, but you get the idea. Then we've got advanced processing, so we can do things like, put it through a graphic equalizer. So, if your voice is a little bit tinny, you can increase the bass, and, it could be nice. There's also an ability to enable noise reduction. I really don't like this. I think if I enable this, and I'll show you, it tends to create a really artificial sound in my eyes, but your particular use case may vary. So let's have a listen. Welcome to the new channel that I have created. So you can see it sounds quite robotic. So I don't know what they were thinking of when they actually coded this noise reduction. So if I was you, I would do any noise reduction that you need in post-production if you wanted to. The next one is spatial positioning. So this allows you to actually position the audio, like if you think of stereo left and right, but this is 3D audio, so you can do elevation as well. And the final one here is background music. So you can actually click this button, drop some music in, and it will generate your voice over that background track. Again, I can't see the point of that. I would prefer to do that in post-production, generate the voice, and then just do it in post. But it is there. So once you've generated this audio, you can listen to it as you've seen there, but you may want to keep it. So what we get now, we get the export options, and we can export it as a WAV. And you've got 3 options here: high quality, medium, low. To be honest, with hard drive space today, I don't see any point going to anything lower than high quality. And then it's just a simple click, export WAV. And you can see here, it tells you where it's exported it to, or you can open here and it tells you the export location. So all I need to do now, open that in File Explorer. And you can see there is my WAV file ready to go. There you go. I think I've covered most what ChatterBox can do. And I may do another video where I explain more how to use this multi-voice voice conversation mode, because that can be quite interesting. But until next time, I hope you find this useful, and like I say, give it a try.